Welcome to another explainer. Today, we're unpacking a really fascinating piece called The Transcendental Tourist. We're going to navigate the incredibly dense historical and spiritual layers of Israel, but we're doing it through the eyes of a curious budget explorer. So, what actually happens when you walk in the footsteps of a 2,000-year-old history? What does it feel like to physically stand right where history of this magnitude went down? Well, we're going to follow our traveler's journey to find out. And as you'll hear, it's a trip that moves from just observing dusty ancient ruins to experiencing a profound, ongoing spiritual awakening. It's all about how these massive external travels can trigger some pretty intense internal shifts. Our explorer begins by seeking the tangible reality of the first century. It's one thing to read historical texts, but it's another thing entirely to physically step into the past. For instance, they visit Nazareth Village, which is actually this meticulously recreated agricultural village built right on a first-century excavation site. You can walk past field terraces, check out ancient olive presses, and watch people recreating the daily life of a first-century carpenter or weaver. It completely grounds the ancient texts in dirt, wood, and stone. And think about Capernaum's layered history for a second. You literally have a modern-day spaceship-like structure, St. Peter's Church, hovering on pillars directly over a 2,000-year-old archaeological excavation. Beneath their feet is the humble first-century residential house of Peter the Fisherman, and built right around that is an octagonal church from the 5th century. You are literally walking over layers of human devotion that span millennia. It's like a giant 3D historical puzzle. That deep sense of time carries over to the Garden of Gethsemane, too. The Romans actually cut down the trees here back in 70 CE, but olive trees, they are incredible survivors. Our traveler notes that the roots of the present trees were carbon dated to be about 2,300 years old. That means they were looking at the descendants of the ancient ones, as new shoots simply grew right out of the cut trunks. The gnarly, twisting wood perfectly captures both the agony of the past and this immense, stubborn resilience. Moving on to Jerusalem, the traveler traces the Via Dolorosa. This is the traditional path of the crucifixion, stretching about a kilometer through the old city, marked by the stations of the cross. But our explorer quickly realizes that the reality of walking these streets provides a really stark, fascinating contrast to what a tourist might initially expect. There is just this crazy juxtaposition here. You have the expected, sacred solemnity of walking Jesus' final path, but you are doing it right in the middle of a vibrant, chaotic reality. Old Jerusalem is a modern Arab Medina. There are armed guards stationed on the corners, vendors are loudly selling treats, and the smell of roasted coffee beans laced with cardamom totally fills the air. It's not some insulated museum. It's a living, breathing, complicated city where the sacred and the everyday mundane collide with every single step. Adding to this beautiful chaos, the tour guide actually leads them through a non-chronological walk of the stations, just for the sake of convenience. It's a completely mixed experience. They start at the first station, which is an Islamic minaret named the Antonia Tower, built over Roman ruins. Then they take in a stunning Catholic mosaic of a crown of thorns at the second station. By the 7th station, they are touching a handprint worn deep into a Medina wall by centuries of passing pilgrims. It's a literal tapestry of different eras and empires overlapping. This overwhelming clash of history, commerce, and daily life eventually brings our traveler to a moment of deep, completely unexpected emotional release. They arrive at the Western Wall with a piece of paper containing their prayer intentions, but what happens next is entirely unscripted. Just to set the scene, the Kotel, or Western Wall, carries immense historical and religious weight. It is the sole surviving retaining wall of the Second Temple, which the Romans destroyed. Today, it's revered as God's address. It's physically divided by modern customs, specifically a barrier separating men and women, but it actually bridges different faiths, drawing both Jewish worshippers and Christian pilgrims through a shared, palpable sense of reverence. While the traveler is there, they're surrounded by Orthodox Jewish men in black suits reciting prayers known as salichot. These are specific, highly emotional prayers for forgiveness and repentance recited in the days leading up to Yom Kippur. So, surrounded by this incredibly intense atmosphere of contrition, our traveler steps up to slip their written prayer right into the ancient stones. And in that moment, placing their hand on the stone, they tap into the collective grief of the site. It unlocks an absolute torrent of personal tears. The paper they brought is completely forgotten. Instead, they find a raw, welling prayer for forgiveness, both to give and to receive. This ancient site of destruction somehow becomes the catalyst for a beautiful, profoundly personal epiphany that forgiveness is the deepest expression of love. Just when you think the journey is going to be purely solemn, heavy, and introspective from here on out, the tone shifts dramatically. The traveler heads north to the Sea of Galilee and finds some seriously unexpected, vibrant life out on the water. First, they visit a museum housing a miraculously preserved first-century fishing vessel, literally discovered buried in the mud during a major drought in 1986. Inspired by that very artifact, local seafaring families have actually crafted a modern fleet of custom wooden replica boats. These vessels have the exact same wide, flat-bottom design as the ancient ones, built to take groups out onto the very waves where so much biblical history happened. Naturally, our traveler boards this wooden replica expecting a quiet, highly reverent journey, a time for silent meditation while gazing out at the Golan Heights. But instead, they get a completely different experience. Their enthusiastic captain, a guy named Daniel Carmel, decides to transform the atmosphere entirely. I absolutely love this detail. The captain walks over to the sound system, and with a simple flick of a switch, the gentle lapping of the waves is instantly eclipsed by the unmistakable driving rhythm of Hava Nagila. He basically turns this historically modeled boat into a full-on hand-clapping dance party. It's such a great reminder that while history here is filled with tempest and tragedy, the joyful spirit of the people is completely unquenchable. And just to keep everyone completely off guard, the captain isn't done. Just as the group catches their breath from the folk dancing, the traditional music abruptly cuts out. Talk about the ultimate cultural whiplash. In its place, the booming 1970s piano riff of ABBA's Dancing Queen. I mean, you can't script that. It creates this moment of hilarious, unadulterated joy under the setting Israeli sun, proving that sacred experiences absolutely do not always have to be silent. Now, the ripple effects of this profound mix of grief, joy, and introspection, they don't just stay in the Middle East. They extend far beyond the borders of Israel, reaching all the way back to the traveler's home in the Philippines years later. Reflecting on a group baptism they witnessed in the lazy, chest-deep waters of the Jordan River, our traveler contemplates the idea of total transformation. They draw on this really powerful quote by C.S. Lewis, who said that resurrection is profounder than mere immortality, that we don't just go on, but we really die and are really built up again. True travel, like true spiritual experience, isn't just adding a photo to your camera roll. It's about a part of you fundamentally changing. What's truly fascinating is how this manifests practically. During that boat ride on the Sea of Galilee in 2019, the group hoisted the Philippine flag to fly side by side with the Israeli flag, a moment of deep cross-cultural unity. Fast forward 7 years to 2026, and that exact memory inspires the traveler to walk into the Chabad of Manila back in the Philippines. They decide to formally study Judaism and the Torah to understand the deep Jewish roots of their own Christian faith. What started as a budget trip to the Middle East birthed a whole new chapter of spiritual education years later. That is wild, right? So as we wrap up this explainer, we have to look inward and ask ourselves, how do the places we visit, the ancient stones, the chaotic modern streets, the completely unexpected moments of joy, ultimately reshape the landscape of our own souls? The Transcendental Tourist shows us that if we travel with our eyes and our hearts wide open, the journey never really ends when we unpack our bags. It just takes on a new form. Thanks for exploring with me today. And hey, keep seeking out the history that moves you.